Hey, good morning, Drive Time. Welcome back. As always, I'm Dave Drum, here to host yet another week and another speaker. Now, a lot of you are familiar with Pastor Joseph Gilchrist, and he's been on Drive Time before. He comes with what is typically a very well prepared and polished thought process. And for those of you who see him speaking at church, what you need to know is even his semi-improvised moments, they're thought through. He is a well-rehearsed speaker, as are most of the guys who come on Drive Time. There's a process behind the scenes that happens. But what's going to happen this week is a little different. Joseph and I had a conversation about it, and he knows what's coming his way, so he did have a little bit of time to prepare. But we're going to do just a little more question, and I want you guys to see behind the preparation and the thoughts that go into a conversation about faith and about not just conceptual faith, but what day-to-day execution of our faith looks like. So, Joseph, welcome back to Drive Time, and thanks for being here.
Thanks. It's great to be here. It's great.
So we're starting it off really simple, and we're gonna. There is a method to my madness, so to speak. But so your first question is, what's your all-time favorite movie? But you got to tell me why.
Yeah, well, I actually don't think this is a simple question. I get this one. I feel like people ask this is like a typical starter question in groups and stuff. People ask me this. It's hard to pick one. I almost feel like you have to break it down by genre. So like if you ask me sports movie, and that is probably my top 5, top 10, Remember the Titans was an all-time favorite, always growing up. As well. I definitely have a favorite TV show. It's The Office. That's by far The Office for TV show. But then I don't know, you have like, I go back to like The Gladiator, Braveheart, Patriot. All of those have got to be up there on my top list too, but that's complete. How am I comparing Remember the Titans and Braveheart? You know what I mean? Like, come on. I don't know how you compare those things. So,
all right, fair enough. I'll give you a pass. I didn't give you a specific enough lane.
No, I think most people do have like the favorite movie, but I'm a little unique. I am not a repeat movie watcher. Like I almost can't, unless it's been like 5 years, I can't just go back and rewatch a movie. It's like if I know the plot twist and I know the turns and I got it the first time, like, cool, that was awesome. You know, I mean, do you go back and rewatch?
Some of them. You said if it's been more than 5 years, and I can definitely think of ones that I watched a long time ago. I think I'm more apt to rewatch a scene if it's a cool, like battle scene. But a comedy, I'm probably more likely to watch the whole thing because the jokes are still funny.
I could probably align myself with that too. A comedy is a little different. It's like, I want to laugh at this. And the second, comedy is better when you do know the punchline coming because you get to take part in it. Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah. So.
All right. So that was an easy one. So in the coming weeks, Mac and I are rolling out a Drive Time, and we're actually talking about the concept of discipline. And as guys, we hate to think about discipline or being disciplined. So what disciplines do you have? Like whether they're spiritual, physical, personal, like something that is truly a discipline, not like, oh, I dabble in this, or I like to think I do this pretty well. But I think if it's truly a discipline, we can identify it pretty quickly because it is an intentional act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think mental discipline is probably something I'm actually pretty good at. It can actually be a pro and a con, I think, in regards to like hyper-focused. And like right now in my season of life, I think I've done really well at being really mentally disciplined, putting my family and putting my job, the church here, at the mental forefront of mainly everything I do. So what I mean by that behind the scenes, I guess, is really, it comes down to my calendar, my time. If you were to ask me like time, money, and energy, where are you disciplined? I'm really disciplined, I think, in my time, where my time goes and where my energy goes. I'm probably a little less disciplined where my money goes. And my wife would validate that statement if you care to ask. No, it comes down to I'm almost in constant review of my calendar. Because that to me does tell me where my time and where my energy is going. And so if I feel like, man, I'm missing out on my family right now, I'm going to go right back to the calendar and go, where do I need to reconstruct? Where do I need to replace these blocks so I can get better family time? Or if I feel like, man, I'm not getting the best out of what I'm doing at work, my top tier things, I think that's another discipline there, is knowing what are you responsible for? What are, even in your work atmosphere? So what's your tier 1 responsibilities? What's your tier 2, tier 3, tier 4? And when you get that list going and then constantly reviewing all these other things in life and in the circles that encompass you, they're trying to steal that time and steal that energy and get your focus off. And I think it's really easy to do. I mean, I think it's natural for us to do that. And so to constantly kind of review and put yourself back up against, if one of the most important things that I do is develop leaders, where am I actually developing leaders? Is that can't just be happenstance. It can't just be, well, when I run into them, but are there actual things locked in? Are you locked in on your time and your energy into developing leaders routinely throughout your week to make sure it's always in front of you? And as that slips, you've got to get back to the drawing board and go, okay, we got to put this back in, put it in here, and here. And I think that's a genuine discipline that I've kind of input into my life. So
that's good. And I think sometimes guys struggle with that thought process of determining the priorities, so to speak. You could be intentional with your calendar, but struggling through trying to figure out like what's the priority right now. And it's funny that you kind of went down that road. I had this conversation with my oldest son recently because he was trying to figure out, like, he's got some stuff coming up and it's like, well, I had this to do and I had this to do. And the thing I told him was, look, there's things that only you can do. And there's things I can help you with. Like, I can't spend, like, no one else can spend time with my wife for me.
Right. Yeah.
But I can find someone to help me with yard work. I can find someone to help me run an event. But I can't find anybody else who can pour into my daughter the way I'm supposed to.
Right.
So
exactly.
I think that becomes part of the filter is what is it that only I can do in this area that I'm trying to evaluate? Yeah.
Yeah. When I first moved down here from New York, I had always done the yard work myself, mowed the lawn myself. But when we got here, especially initially the first 2 years, and I enjoy actually doing that stuff. But the first 2 years, my workload increased. And what I took here was I was the sixth youth pastor in 3.5 years. So it was broken. Trying to say that, kindly, but it was broken. And so I had to get in here and I had to fix some things. And I was on the exec team as well. So we were building church culture as well together. And so the workload increased. So it literally came to the point of going, I can either take the 3 or 4 hours, a week down here. It feels like every week you're going to be out there for a while, doing all this yard work. But again, you have to, everything you say yes to, you're saying no to, 100 million other things. And if one of those things happens to be like time with my kids, time with my wife, it's like, well, it's more, can you pay somebody, $60, $80 a month to do that so that you get your time back? And you're getting now spending that time, that 3 or 4 hours, again, whether it's with my kids or whether it's leadership development or some of the other, top priorities. I think that's a great way to break it down. Is you've got to figure out what are your top priorities and then make sure you're constantly reviewing that and giving your time and energy to that.
All right. So, and I feel like we could spend a lot of time on some of these questions, like literally could do a drive time on all of it. But again, in interest of trying to show the guys just the heart behind really some of the more polished, weeks that we have on here. I want to jump into the next question. So kind of along those lines of discipline, what is something you're just trying to get better at? That whether it's, again, personal, spiritual, family, work, whatever it is, what's something right now you're like, man, I'm just trying to get better at this.
Yeah. The first answer that kind of pops in my mind is everything. But that's kind of who I like. I want people like Pastor Corey, people like, Bobby, Pastor Mac, like I want them always telling me like, hey, you could have said this better. You could have done this better. You could lead if you led this way or that way, or try this, shift that. Like I am a constant, I think I'm constantly trying to develop and get better at the craft, at the skill. I think of my family as well. I really always do. I'm coming home most days trying to figure out, man, how can I be a better dad? How can I be a better husband? Man, I could have done that a little better. I could have said that, kinder. What kind of time am I giving to the kids and to my wife? Quality time. So, man, I don't know. It's hard to pick one. Most of my lenses, I guess I have a little of I'm almost in constant critique mode, maybe to a fault sometimes, but trying to improve most of the time, always. I think right now the biggest one would be dad and husband, right now. The professional side, something I want to really jump into actually, and I don't know people on here who know me and who don't, but public communicating, I really still think that there's a whole nother level that I would like to actually work this skill, I guess, into the ground a little more and improve, go up another level. But at home, I just think there's another level of fathering that, like I think you kind of encapsulated really well. Like nobody else in the whole world can replace me there. And so, my goal is to become the best dad and the best, husband possible. And I think it's easier for me to sometimes focus in on work, key in on the things, that maybe give me a little more life at times, but trying to come back to center and go, man, well, my daughter's 6, my son is 3. So 12 to 15 years, they're gonna be 18 and then 18. And it's like, man, that time seems to be going by pretty quick. So how can I zero in on that now, make that really count? So when they're 18, graduating, leaving the house, that, I'm not going to look back and regret it. And hopefully we have a genuine relationship. That's my hope. So
that's good. That's a good thing to try and get better at. So now kind of into the next step of, as you improve in stuff, and I mean, not just you, but all of us, as we grow and improve and we have people pouring into us and showing us how we can improve, that builds confidence. And so from that, as someone who is an effective communicator already, like, how do you kind of reconcile like humility and confidence with pride and arrogance? Because I feel like, for me, I feel like that there's definitely a line between those, but I don't know how wide of a line that is.
Yeah. I think there's actually a wide line internally, but externally people have a harder time finding out which one you are, right? Like, I think internally it's more clear, but I think that's the age old question too. Jim Collins, I think, is, wrote Level 5, talked about Level 5 leaders. And he talks about the Level 5 leader has the tenacious will and yet has humility. And I actually, for a season in my life, was kind of infatuated by that statement. Like, how do you have a tenacious will? Like, the idea behind is like, you will, rip walls down and tear through seemingly, anyone and everyone to get what you're trying to get done. And yet you have this huge humility. I'm like, these things seem opposite. And for a while I went to a lot of even Q&As with other leaders, and would sit in conferences. And that was my question, like for like a year or two. I just asked that question. How do you think a tenacious will, basically exactly what you're asking, how do these things collide? Humility and confidence, they don't always seem to be, together. And Patrick Lencioni has a really good statement, I think, too. He says, humility is not about thinking of yourself. Humility is not about thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And so I think that's it. I think there's some goodness in there, except for I think that the way to humility is self-awareness. So I think that, right. And self-awareness has what? Self-focus for a while, at least for a while. I think we actually look within and we start to focus in on ourselves, and we start to recognize who we are. I think when we do that, like legitimately and genuinely start to look and review ourselves, critique ourselves a little bit. It can be good, bad, and ugly, right? So you do start to find initially, like you might find some talents in there, but you're also going to find all the bad and all the ugly. And I don't think you ever get away from that. Like you're looking into that thing, you start to realize, maybe for me, it's like how obnoxious I was or am, how annoying, at times I can be. And then also like, oh, it seems to be, I have this little talent hidden there too. But that comes from focusing on myself for a little while, and then learning to turn that, okay, now that I know who I am and what I am, that's actually where confidence comes from. Is I'm not walking into a room now wondering who I am, thinking who I am, because, right, if we don't ever do this, the people who don't ever do this are typically the most insecure people. And so they walk into a room full of insecurities, full of self-doubt, full of not knowing who I am. And it's like the accidental mess maker, right? They just break things. They say things. You're like, what are you doing? What do you stop yourself? But it's because they never stopped for a moment and reflected on who they actually are and how their statements affect everybody else in the room. And so they're not even able to walk in with any type of tact, with any type of confidence. And so it actually, I think, comes across more arrogant when you don't stop and do, right, like the self work or the work on yourself. And so I think it actually takes a lot of work on yourself to then walk into a place and go, I'm actually good. If they ask me to go up and say something, I can say something. If they want me to sit in the back corner, I can sit in the back corner. I'm okay, me, myself, and I. Like, I don't need it. But I think the arrogance and entitlement, can come from a place of, dude, you never figured yourself out. And so you're grasping at straws. You're just trying something and shooting at something. And that's, I mean, we all know those, we all know that person. It's like, that's obnoxious. It's annoying. It can come across arrogant. It can come across prideful. And I don't think sometimes I think you're like what you're saying, it can look similar on the outside, external, but once you get behind closed doors with people, I think you really find out, oh, they're not arrogant. They're not prideful. They're confident. And then I think a lot of times too, you find out they're not even arrogant. The other side is like, they're not necessarily arrogant and prideful. They're wildly insecure. I think that's more of where it comes from often. I think it's a rare human being who's actually just like, right. Like, the Kanye West, maybe, I don't know him personally, but you know what I mean? It's the rare human being that comes out that's just like, I am all about myself all the time, and I know it, and I'm okay with it. It's like, ooh, I think that's the rare individual. I think most people who are playing that game are actually wildly insecure.
That's interesting. So, all right, well then let's do this. I know we had some other questions kind of in the pocket to use, but at the same time, because it is drive time and we do like to talk tangibles. And despite the fact that you and I even talked about the fact that these questions felt disconnected, but I feel like as we went through them, there was actually a building of the conversation through the questions. So let me ask you this. Based on what we've talked about so far, disciplines and striving to get better at things and confidence and humility, like what's something, whether it's one or two for this week where a guy can walk out of here and go, you know what, I want to work on that thing. What's your gut reaction in the sense of like, I think a lot of guys just need to, man, if they could get this, it's really going to, whether it take their leadership, take their relationships, whatever, up a notch. What do you think that would be?
My gut reaction, and I don't know that dudes are going to love it, but I think it's reflection. I think stop. Like I'm with you, right? Like I'm with us, whatever, as dudes, like in the universe. I hate stopping. I hate it. Monday is my day to stop. And the last few Mondays, I got all these projects on my mind that I'd rather do. I would rather go work and keep busy than stop and think and review both about my last week and think about, a little of what's to come, but really review and reflect on where am I actually at? And I do, right? Like, I know it's like this sometimes, on a drive time to dudes, I'm like, this kind of sucks to admit, but it's like with my journal open and a pen in hand and no technology, but I'm reflecting and I'm thinking and I'm processing. Where are it's like what we talked about to start with. Where are my priorities? Where have they been in the last week or two? How did I do? Like, is my relationship with God going well? Is my relationship with my wife good? Is my relationship with my kids good? And I think sometimes we're afraid to stop because we don't like the answers to those questions. And it's even more important that we do it. Stop, ask the question. You're not trying to shame yourself or guilt yourself into something. You're just trying to look at the truth, the matter-of-fact truth of going, wow, this could improve. And then you can move to the how questions. Okay, well, is this an actual priority for me? Is it? If it is, then as men, like, stand up, like, step up and go, okay, how do I improve then? What do I need to do? Who do I need to ask? Right? Sometimes it's like, I don't have that answer, but that's something I really want to talk to Pastor Corey, or that's something, man, I'm going to call my dad up after this and see what kind of advice he has, what kind of thoughts he has. I'm going to open my Bible up and read that for a little bit, see if anything jumps out. I'm going to sit and worship for a little bit and just listen to the Lord and see if he strikes something up and go, a lot of the solutions I think can tend to be simplistic, but I think we're not even stopping and looking at it and reflecting and going, man, how am I actually doing? And because we don't actually ask that question, we can't improve. And as dudes, if we want to, put some masculinity back into it, I guess, like about sports, we love sports, right? We love football. We love, I love hockey. I grew up playing hockey, but football, hockey, baseball, basketball, whatever you want to say. Guess what? What do these guys do after game day? They get into a room, they watch the tape, they review their game tape with what? With a notebook and a pen most of the time. With a notebook and a pen. And that's what we see in the clips. If you get behind the scenes and you see some of these documentaries, they got a notebook and a pen and they're sitting there. And what are they doing? They're watching themselves. They're reviewing themselves to see, based off of my past performance, how do I get better? And now they basically build out a list for themselves that following week. This is what I'm coaching myself on. This is what I'm going to ask my coaches to coach me on. This is what I'm drilling myself on. This is how I'm going to get better. Right? Like, and when we see it in the sports world, we're like, yeah, but then it's like, that's not your life. That's a game that other adult men are playing to make money for their families. Are you willing to do that for you? in your family. And it could come down career. It could come down personal. It could come down spiritually. It could come down your physical, side of things. It could, whatever, the whole thing's open. You're going not just in a game, but in my life. Am I reviewing, reflecting, taking notes down in any way, shape, or form? Because otherwise, you're shooting at air. Otherwise, you have no target. And so you're like, I'll just get better. No, you won't. How?
That's
good.
The
first thing that comes out.
No, that's good, because I would agree with you. Like, I mean, even my question is, what do we do this week? Like, don't do anything, just stop. And so it's contrary to the way we're wired, but it's also important.
Yeah. And it's not the other 6 days, right? Like, actually, if anything, by the end of Monday, right, it helps, because now I'm like, woo, I'm recharged. I'm like, I'm ready to roll. But for one day, yeah, I think stop, sit down, reflect.
That's good. That's good. All right, Joseph, thank you. I appreciate the insight, and I enjoyed hearing the backstory to some of it. And I learned that the next time I ask that question about what's your favorite movie, I'm going to need to be a little more specific to the genre. So, maybe wait,
do you have one? What's yours?
Oh man. All right. All time.
You're like,
no. Here's the problem. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. It is of all genres, all-time favorite movie. Saw it 3 times in the movie theater. So everybody's already thinking like it's got to be epic. Bro, it's Waterboy by Adam Sandler.
Whoa! Wow.
I love that movie. I laugh hilarious. To this day. I can't count how many times I've seen it. I just think it's funny. So that was a hesitation. I was almost afraid to admit it. So
no, I love it. Hey, it's classic though. Water sucks, man. Mama said. So no, that's good. I think that's hilarious. 3 times though in the movie theater.
In the movie theater.
Not a classic movie theater movie, but
no, it's not. It's not. So
that's awesome.
But all right, gentlemen, we will see you again next week, hopefully for a less telling on my end version of Drive Time. But Joseph, thanks for being here. And guys, we'll see you again next week.